Thank you everyone for coming out. My name is Aidan Cunniffe. I live here in Brooklyn, so not too far. And for everyone who traveled in, thank you for coming to our lovely city for this. It's been a great event so far. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to track the AI-generated code that is in everyone's repos being written all day by these coding agents. So anyone figure out this coding agent stuff? Everyone using it, I assume, if you're here? OK, cool. So I every conference talk I do, I always come up with an alternative title that's more fun. This is one of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes. He said that a computer is like the bicycle for our minds. And what he meant by that was basically that a bicycle is just a hunk of metal. It doesn't go very fast. Humans don't go very fast, but together they go faster than any animal in the animal kingdom. And that was his metaphor for how technology can make us better. So when all this coding agent stuff hit in the beginning of the year, and people started using it, I felt like there was this like massive opportunity, but I had no idea how to bike and juggle these three things and get the most out of it. I felt like sometimes I'd hit enter and 2 hours later I had made no progress, and then other times I'd hit enter and things worked really great and I was like, oh, this is amazing, like the whole world's changed now. So I wanted to get a little more scientific about this. And over the 4th of July, when fireworks were going on, I was writing all kinds of silly code trying to figure out how to get better and use data from my agents to become a better programmer. So I wanted to know basically like what % of my code was actually written by AI. Were the bugs that I was finding caused by AI code that I just sort of approved without looking at it? How much of my code did I end up rewriting? And then what magical prompting techniques that I was copying off Twitter actually worked? Can I prove this with data? So I'm like a very sciencey numbers guy. I was like, I need real data to figure this out. So I log into the dashboards for all the agents, and I find stuff like this. It says, you generated 45,000 lines of code this week. But then I look at GitHub and it's like, well, only 6,000 made it in. So the data was just really, really bad. I don't know if they're overcounting it for business reasons or it's just a really hard technical problem. But I didn't find this to be very useful. And then all the tools I tried to use to detect AI code using AI, that all felt like fighting fire with fire, and it just was very expensive as well. So it felt like there were no good approaches for doing this. So I had the thought that I think every developer has late at night, which is, it's time to rewrite Git. Luckily, I amended that line a little bit, and I wrote a Git extension instead. So that Git extension is called Git AI. You install it on your computer, and then whenever one of these agents writes code, it will basically mark the AI-generated lines as sort of generated by AI, and then Git AI, the extension, will track that. So it'll go through merges, rebases, cherry picks, all the nasty, evil stuff that you can do to commits and diffs. Git AI will preserve the authorship through all those real-world workflows. So let me show you real quick how this works. I'm going to bop over to Cursor. This is our actual project. So the Git AI project is actually using Git AI, so you can see like what AI code in the project was generated, what stuff we wrote by hand, what stuff was written by AI, and then we had to like overwrite. We've learned a lot looking at all of this. So I'll just run this real quick prompt. We work cross-platform, so we have a lot of like Windows compatibility stuff we have to do. And we're starting to look at WSL and making that support better. So I'm gonna have it generate a quick helper for me to detect WSL. So there we go, magic. Cursor did it for me with Composer. And I'll just commit this normally. Wrote a couple lines there. And I'll just call it WSL check. Great, and it told me that 100% of that code was written by AI. There's this little bar graph that is filled in based on how much I write versus how much the AI writes. And then when I do Git AI blame, and I open this file, you'll see all of these Aidan Cunniffe and Sasha lines. And at the bottom, these are all from Cursor. So it's tracking that AI code really accurately. And it's doing this by attaching Git notes to every single commit. And those Git notes look like this. Let's grab this commit SHA. Cool. So it basically will find all of the lines that each prompt generated. So we're not just tracking the lines that were written by AI, we're actually tracking the lines and associating them with the prompt that generated them. And this is basically saying, hey, in this commit at this point in time to FC, lines 52 through 91 were generated by this prompt right here. And because it's in Git notes, it's going to be shared with all of my collaborators so they can see basically the AI code I generated too. Cool. All right, so back to the slides. That was my backup because the demo guides aren't always nice to people. I'm going to talk a little bit about how this works. So we've actually been working with Cursor and teams at some of the other agents, Claude Code, Copilot, some of the smaller ones, and basically directly integrating so that when these tools generate AI code, it calls Git AI and will basically mark their code as AI generated. It does this basically by using hooks in a lot of them, and then some of the agents have a direct integration where they basically call us and say, these lines were written by AI. And then the responsibility of the Git AI project is to store these in the notes, make sure they get synced back and forth properly with the upstreams, and then make sure that when you do all of these gnarly things like reset and rebase and merge and cherry pick, the notes are synced and sort of merged and rewritten accurately. So when you're using these real world Git workflows, Git AI is able to track that code going forward. Cool. Sweet. So the goal here is to build this so it's open source and multi-agent. Most of the companies that have started to adopt this use 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes all you can eat or built their own agents. So it's really important if we're going to be measuring AI code to be able to look at all these agents in sort of the same views with the same kind of data. So that's been a really big sort of important piece of the project. We also really believe in being explicit. There are a lot of people building tools like this that are heuristic driven and try to guess what AI code is. We've just been knocking on doors, reaching out to the people building the agents and getting them to support it, and they've all been very happy to work with us and support like a community standard around this. So we're hoping to build like the community standard here for tracking AI code. We've also made it Git native for all the reasons that I talked about. There are a lot of real world workflows. We all use Git every day, and we shouldn't go around and have to change that core part of the SDLC just because we want to start tracking AI code and saving our prompts. So what's been the value for me? Like, have I learned to ride my bike? I think for the teams I'm working on and some of the early users, everyone's gotten a lot of value out of understanding how much of this ROI that they're sort of seeking is coming from different agents. They can see, oh, this one's working better for this team or this kind of code or this language. People can start to understand a lot more about which teams are using AI the best and who's getting better, all this stuff. That's really important, especially with how much all of these tools cost. I've also found it really useful during code review. Everyone I've talked to who uses it has told me that they review code differently based on whether an AI wrote it or whether a human wrote it. And more than once, I've gone and run that blame command and found out, oh, like that's why that code is the way it is. Like now I understand it. I can see like what the prompt was and what the intent was behind this block of code. And then I'm starting to get here. I definitely have learned a lot, but understanding like what kind of prompting actually works. It was a lot of guessing before. It was a lot of vibes like, oh, let's do it this way because this was the latest tweet I saw. But now I feel like I'm starting to build better instincts about how to work with these tools. And I've gone from the old style, which was just like type 10 pages and hit enter, to this like kind of new iterative style where I kind of work with it like a companion. And it's definitely taught me sort of how to focus on the right approach for different kinds of tasks as well. So looking ahead, I guess what we're hoping to do with this project is two things. One is making the agent smarter, and one is making the human smarter. This is back to the bicycle, but we really believe that like an average model with better context is going to beat an awesome model with poor context. And there's a lot of really, really valuable context in these prompts. Like developers are literally spending all day writing them now. Being able to work with those prompts later, it's kind of silly like that we just throw them away. There must be valuable context there. So I think we can make the agents 10, 20, 30 IQ points smarter just by storing that information in a useful way and making it available for future prompts. So that's still very experimental, don't have a good answer there yet, but we see it as like a really cool thing to build the project towards. Another thing is this prompting. Like I said before, like I've already learned a lot about prompting and I want to make more of those insights available to other engineers who are using these tools every day. And same thing I was saying before, I think an engineer who knows how to work with coding agents armed with an average model is going to beat an engineer who doesn't really know the best way to work with the agents who has an awesome model. So I think this is interesting, fun, primitive that will help us both get smarter and help the agents get a lot smarter too. So that's Git AI. You can start using it today. It's open source. There's a download in blue, and if you want to talk to me about this or anything else, there's talk to me in red. So thank you guys so much. Have a few minutes for questions, and appreciate you all coming to the talk. Cool. You were first, and then we'll come over here.
So you mentioned that you're capturing the prompt as well in the Git notes. Did I hear that correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Is there like any limit? Like what if that prompt happens to be some kind of massive context dump workflow set of instructions? You're still capturing all of that?
Yeah, so we capture like all of the messages and all the tool calls, but we're not capturing the writes since it's all ending up in Git anyway. And we're not doing tool results either because that probably doesn't do much anymore, and there could be like information in there that you don't want to share. Okay. So we found that when you take that stuff out, like they end up being pretty small. But right now, yeah, there's not like a hard limit on that. You could have a conversation and get pretty long.
Okay. And then one other question around like, you showed the Git AI blame command.
Mm-hmm.
Is that available like in GitHub? Is there any kind of like web-based extension, or like if I'm looking at a repo, am I seeing that context like at that level or just locally?
So right now it's local. I have been talking to some of the SEM tools about this. Since the data is in the notes, they could use it too. Obviously that like doesn't happen overnight. But if people open issues and talk to them as well and create momentum, I could see people adopting it. It's been really useful for me to like pull it down and look at it myself.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. There we go.
Any more questions?
Yeah. How do you think about some of the like growing cloud AI agents working with these kind of workflows? Because like right now it's like you install it on your machine, it integrates with the Git CLI or whatever. Let's say I'm using Claude Code in the web or AI Studio from Gemini. Like obviously all that code's AI generated. Some of it might end up in Git. Do you have any thoughts about how you might integrate with that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's going to look very similar. Like those have authors, so they usually they'll commit if it isn't a repo, and they'll like put like something at google.com email. So we could probably have like a heuristic where we look for those specific emails like Codex at OpenAI, Gemini at Google, and then just sort of add our own like little annotation to map that back to Git AI. I still think a lot of that code you end up fetching locally, doing stuff on top of, and then we have this concept of mixed authorship, which is when an AI writes something and a human changes it. So hopefully we can get all that information to play nicely together. Great question. And you and then in the back afterward.
Yeah, I was just curious, on one of your first slides, you talked about the question of, you know, how often is my AI code getting rewritten by a human, let's say? Like, have you collected any data on that, and what are your findings in starting to look into this type of thing? Yeah, so blog post coming soon. The rough anecdotal data I have is that it was a lot worse. So when I was prompting like bigger one-shot prompts, I was going back and rewriting a lot of that code later. And then as I got more specific and was doing things more like function or one test at a time, it was going down. So it was something like 60%. It's probably closer now to around 20% over the course of like a week or two. We're going to start publishing a lot more of this kind of stuff on our blog as more of the big companies who use it share that data with us.
Cool. This is a pretty amazing tool. As soon as I read about that and realized this exists yesterday, I went straight ahead to install that and told my boss as well. And then after I installed everything, I realized that it doesn't work with Codex yet. because it seems that we are waiting for hooks for implementation for that, but also put me into thinking. Have you thought of approaches that can work regardless of the agent that someone might be using or how they configure the tools, or are you essentially like blocked to be like in a partnership with them so that they add logic in order to allow you to sort of like hook in, get the AI code?
Yeah, so I think the goal right now with the project, like we have to pick some principles, and one of the ones that we're really trying to get behind is to be super explicit and not try to guess which code comes from AI. So that's like I think that's one of those things where it's gonna have a slower ramp. Like we have to go talk to all these agents and get them on board. A month ago we had no support basically. Now we have a lot more. I think in a month or two we'll have much better coverage than we do today. But I think it's a good long-term bet because ultimately I don't want like fuzzy data about what comes from the AI. I want very explicit data and I want to know exactly which prompt led to which lines of code. Great question. All right, another question, yes.
Yeah, just a follow-up on that. Have you thought about what happens if they sort of like start implementing their own kind of solution for tracking their own AI code? Or how do they use like things that is already some sort of standard for this?
Can you ask it again?
Yes, I was wondering if you had thought about what would happen if the agents sort of like start implementing their own solution for tracking their own AI code as opposed to like just getting support for this implemented.
Yeah, so we've talked to a few companies. Like the question was, have you thought about what will happen if any of these agents start to implement their own standard for tracking code? We've talked to a few companies that are adopting this, like big 10,000 person plus companies that have been rolling this out over the last couple weeks, and also a lot of these agent companies. And I think right now, like everyone's very multi-agent and nobody wants just the data from one and then the data from the other. They want to compare the agents to each other. They want to see how each is performing, and they want to have one like cohesive place where all this data is stored. So I think the bet is that this stuff is going to remain kind of outside of any one agent. It might be wrong, but that's kind of the game we're playing, and we're trying to work really well with the rest of the ecosystem. Awesome, thank you.
I would actually say we need like a standard way of telemetry like we have on machines OTel, but for coding agents, and they will align on something, I would say. There was a story once from the folks, I think it was All Hands who presented somewhere, that said, we refrained from committing code as the agent because that actually got like worse at people not looking at the PRs. So it's an interesting observation, kind of like, that like you can store it in a node, but the committer can still be the human. That's kind of like a side note to that.
Yeah, it definitely works. You see both. You can see like the responsible human who like merged it and generated it, and then the agent who helped them do the work.
Yeah.
So.
And I think another extension would be cool for you is, so people have been checking whether one LLM is better than the code than the other. And so they typically change the whole workflow and they do it. But I know of one extension, a VS Code extension, that measures it by saying they present actually the two solutions from this LLM and the other LLM, and then they say this one was better. So if there would be a way to capture this, then you actually also kind of anecdotal telemetry of what is actually the best coding agent in there. So
Yeah, definitely. I think helping people pick the right agent for the job is part of making people smarter. And I think there's a lot of great data we can use to make the agents smarter too. So it's been super fun, and hopefully this is useful for everyone and their teams.
yeah, thanks for sharing. Good talk. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.